I salute you all. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for always following up this channel. Subscribe and like my videos for more. So basically today we are under the law of torts. The law of torts. And basically here what you have to put in mind under the law of torts is a tort is a civil wrong. The law of torts deals normally with what? With the civil wrongs. And the only remedy that you want, it is damages. You are being compensated through what? Damages. That is what tort means, or what is a tort, is a civil wrong. And basically tort is a course unit that is a kind of easy. But what you have to master here in this course unit of tort is you must be a reader of what? Cases. These cases are the ones that give you a broader what? Aspect of the meaning of the principle in a particular what? In a particular topic. So as we are going ahead, we shall start with the history of tort. The history of tort. The history of tort, we are looking at where the development of tort, where does tort law develops from, or where does it come from. You get? However much here we know, and it is well versed, that the tort came from what? Tort came from England. You get? Now we are looking at its history in England. That's where we are looking at the history of tort. So basically, I will start with what? I will start with the Gentile society. It has various stages. Its development, or the history of tort, it was developed in various stages. We have what they call the Gentile society, or the Gentile stage. We have what they call the slave society. We have what they call the feudal society. We have what they call mercantilism stage. We have what they call the industrial capitalism and the financial capitalism. All those stages are the different steps where tort law developed from. So basically today we shall first come with the Gentile society. The Gentile society, or the Gentile stage, it was the very, very first stage in the development or in the history of tort. And basically here what you have to know, or what you have to place in mind, is that here this is the setting whereby the society wasn't developed. You get? The society wasn't developed, but basically the society was organized on the basis of clans, and there was collective what? Collective basis. There they had the collective as a society, related to the African Traditional Society of Uganda that we had. So this was the Gentile society. It was based on clans, collective efforts to come up with something, and the community or the society could work together to sustain themselves. That is under the Gentile society. And also under the Gentile society, we realized that the people lived in a natural what? In a natural economy. What do I mean a natural economy? The natural economy, they got food out of the nature. You get? The nature. They didn't have anything as an exchange, kind of exchange, what and what, but it was basically the nature itself that where they got their sustenance. And basically they didn't have that market economy. You get? So they had the natural economy rather than they didn't have the market economy. And basically under the Gentile society, we had three stages also. We had what they call the savagery. We had barbarism, and we also had civilization. You get? Under savagery, we had the lower one, the middle, and the upper. So under the lower savagery, we get that there we are no skills at all, and just it was the nature to survive. You get? They lived on what? On sustenance, on to live on. So that was under the lower. There were no skills basically. You get? And remember, in this ancient or in this society, people lived in a traditional way. You get? What do I mean in traditional way? It was always how can I say, people could practice those traditional forms of getting what to eat, you get, for their economy. So basically, not that in what? In mind. Then when you go to the middle stage of savagery, this is where they discovered what? Fire, clubs and what? And spears, you get. Then when you go to the upper stage of savagery, they basically here they bought bows, arrows, and arrows that were, these things were made out of what? Polished stones, you get, and they were used for hunting, you get. Basically in this era, hunting was key. Hunting was a mode of what? Looking of what? It was the activity of the day-to-day. And basically that was composed under what? Savagery. Still under there we have what they call barbarism. We have the lower stage of barbarism and the middle and the upper. Under the lower stage of barbarism, here we realize that there was pot weaving. There was pot weaving, domestication, and agriculture. Domestication, that is the rearing of what? Animals, you get. Then the middle stage of barbarism, that was composed of bronze tools and weapons. They started making tools out of bronze, you get, and weapons. Still under that stage, there was division of labor, whereby the children were to do this, the wives were to stay at home, and the men to go and hunt. If it was a community service, they could distribute what? The work for anyone to do, because it was a collective form of what? Service in the society. So there was division of what? Of labor. Then when you go to the upper stage of barbarism, this is where they get iron smelting. We all know that what is iron smelting. They started gaining tools that were used in what? In farming, tools that were used for hunting under iron what? Smeltings. Then the final stage was that of civilization. Civilization came in, you get, as the final stage. And under this stage, it brought up a different concept. You get, it widened. People became became a bit literate. That's what I can say. They started writing, as we shall see. Then, under the Gentile society, since it was composed of clan, you get, and the laws that govern different people, they were the food taboos, the totems, and the social regulations. Those were called the social what? Regulations. The food taboos, the totems, the clan totems, the thing that, how can I say, also the blood relationships, that a wife you cannot marry, children, a brother, you cannot marry your sister. So those were the social relationship, that all the laws that were used for what? Regulations under the Gentile society, you get. So basically that is a preamble or the synopsis under the Gentile what? Society. Then when you move further, we have this slave society. Under the Gentile society, remember, under the Gentile society, civilization had what? Had started. Then when civilization started, we came to, people started writing, you get. When they started writing, they became a class of what? Philosophers, you get. And these philosophers brought that concept, you get, that brought in, or that ushered in the slave society. Slave society, basically, basically, and another rule, what you have to know about a slave society, they say that a woman was the first slave. What do they mean by a woman was the first slave? A woman was the first slave whereby he was left at home on the commands of the man, and was used like a sex material. He was always to do all the donkey work that was at home, you get, and was under the armpits of the what? Of the man. That's why most of the scholars say that a woman was the first what? Was the first slave. But however, in the due course, realize that they are ushered what? A new class of what? Slaves. So basically here, what you have to know, bear that in mind. So under the slave society, we realize that when people became able to produce surplus, since they were in agriculture, to produce a surplus what? Production. It became possible to also sustain what? A class of persons who were not producing what? Anything, you get. So basically these were the slave owners, you get. Because they say that a certain class of people was able to produce what? A surplus produce that could sustain even the people that weren't what? In production. So basically this was ushered out of the what? Of the ideas of the philosophers. You get, these people, the philosophers did writing, and out of writing, for them, they thought, their thinking was that for the philosophers, for them, what they lamented is that thinking was the primary what? Point, whereas labor was a secondary what? Point. That's what the philosopher said. Thinking was the primary one, and labor was the what? The secondary one. And this ushered or resulted into classes or classism in Europe. You get, and the philosophers started appropriating the wealth of those who produced under what? Their slavery. You get. So this was the concept of those people called the philosophers. And the slave society basically escalated, whereby many people, these people or the minority, were made to what? To produce, because they had nothing. So they were under the masters, who were the slave lords or their masters, that made them to work to produce what? Because for them, actually, as the result, they brought that concept of classism, where for them they had knowledge as philosophers, and the other one, since they were illiterate, so they were made to do what? To do other work, or to become the servants of those what? Of those philosophers. But however, in the long run, the slave society collapsed. You get, and here what you have to know, because it collapsed because that the empire had become what? Unsustainable. You get, the slave population became too small to sustain the majority who were not what? In participating in trade, because everyone could be the master. So the slave population became a kind of small to sustain those that were not in what? In production. So as a result, the rate of production among the slaves was very low because of the high population of what? Of males. You get, reproduction, because since many males were the one under slavery, the rate of production, giving birth, was what? Was low. You get. So as a result, the slaves were freed. Understand? Were freed, and this displaced the what? The slave labor, leading to the collapse of the what? Of the slave society. Those slaves were freed. So as a result, when these slaves were freed, they had to go back to their original land, or they had to look for where to stay. You understand? And where some of them, they even didn't go back home, but they stayed in other areas. So those areas they lived in, they were known as colonies. You understand? Colonies. Basically, since most of them being a slave to someone, when he gives you your freedom, sometimes you are homeless. So they stayed in areas known as colonies, and these colonies were owned by people, and these people became the landowners, which ushered into the stage of what? Feudalism. You get? Feudalism, in the layman's understanding, it was the unfair distribution of what? Of land. So we go to the stage of feudalism. So this happened from the year of 800 AD to 450 AD. That is the feudal stage. You get. And remember, basically, under what you have to know under feudalism, it is, in the layman's understanding, is the unfair distribution of what? Unfair distribution of land. But basically, note this. You understand? Here you must have the idea of what happened in England during the Magna Carta. You get that period. So this period contrasted on what we are talking about currently here. It was an unfair distribution of land. Since the land was owned by the king, you get, it was owned by the king, you get, and the church. They are the ones that dominated that land. So basically, this is the concept that we are looking at, what really happened. And basically what you have to know, the law of torts developed in this stage. You get the feudal stage, or feudalism stage. So as a result, they basically brought out the idea of serfdom, the land, feudal land ownership, known as the serfdom. And these serfs actually, these serfs were the ones that squatted on the land of the feudal lords. You get, and they could sometimes pay through produce or labor, you get, to the feudal lords. Basically, hope you have known how feudalism came from the slave society. So under feudalism, people practiced, all the serfs practiced Practiced production, which was agriculture. Basically, what you have to know under feudal states, we had the church, we had the crown, which was the king, the monarch, that was the king, we had the serfs, and we had also the bourbons. You get the barons. The barons, we all know what a baron is. Barons were like in the layman's understanding in Uganda, it's like the RDC. Those were the barons in England by that time. Those are the people that own land at the expense of the serfs that were squatters on the land. And they paid to the landlords through Through produce or through labor. You get. So basically, under this period, realized that the production that was made, it was made through agriculture, through water wheels, through hands, and through Through plowing. You get, through plowing. And basically, under this period of the feudal state, or the feudal state, we had also the handcraft industries. Handcraft industries, we all know, things that are made out of hand. Those are the industries that were there under the under the feudal stage, basically, in the history of Torts. You get, and basically the main economic unit, or the main economic unit during that time, it was known as the Mano, Manor, the Mano, which was basically, what you have to know, that was the main economic main economic unit. And basically what you have to know, it came from the colonies. These were the things, colonies, those were the areas where those slaves that were freed, where they stayed. You get. So basically, under the feudal state, these people, all the serfs, they had that common land for what? For grazing. They had that common land whereby everyone could graze his or her animals. And basically, as I told you, rent was paid through produce. And these people, or the feudal lords, had the harsh means of collecting rent. You get. Failure to pay, you could be convicted from the land, and you could become homeless. And basically, they are also developed the guilds. You get. These guilds were employed to collect the rent for the guild masters. You get. They could move around to collect rent. And still these guilds, for them, they engaged in pottery, weaving, and blacksmith, those guilds. But they are the ones that were responsible for collecting rent of the guild masters. You get. These people, since these guild masters, they had a lot of people on their land, so they employed the guilds to collect rent on their behalf. So basically, under this feudal state, it was an era that ushered whereby people suffered a lot of things. And that's why you see under this feudal stage, or the feudalism, this stage whereby you see the Magna Carta was developed. You get. They first brought in the charter. You get the charter, which the king refused to do to abide. Then Magna Carta came in, just reduced on the powers of the king. Magna Carta of 1215 reduced the powers of the king. And for it, actually, they even lamented that it was the Bill of Rights. You get. The barons complained, and the church also, so they reduced the powers of the king, whereby land was also left for the barons. It was not invested in the king alone. And basically, since this was the major stage whereby you see most of the Torts developed in in this stage of feudalism. We shall highlight some of the what? Some of the torts that developed. Basically, note this. These are some of the torts that developed under this stage. We have the writ of trespass. The writ of trespass developed under the 13th century. You get, under the 13th century, and it was to address the serious breaches of peace. We all know what trespass means. Since feudalism was composed of land, so if you could trespass on somebody's land without permission, you was always what? Liable. And bear in mind, under this tort, or under these torts that we are talking about, they were the cause of action. Since if you didn't have a writ, you get, a writ was a cause of action. If we didn't have a writ, you couldn't have any case. And these torts favored the what? The nobility, the people that have had land, at the expense of the serfs and the peasants. You get, since we are going to look at these torts whereby they favored only the what? The people that had land, or the people that had money. But the peasants, the squatters on the land, they had no tort, they had no cause of what? Action. So these torts were only made for those people that had what? Had land. We have started with the writ of trespass. We have seen developed in the 13th century. Then we have the writ of assumpsit. This writ of assumpsit was originated or developed into the writ of what? Contract, whereby once there was a breach of what? Of a contract, you could be what? Answerable. You get, so that is the writ of what? Assumpsit. Then we have the writ of debt. What do I mean by a writ of debt? Basically, it is recovery of money, or price of goods, or a price of goods, money promised under what? Under document, or under sealed what? Document, or money from what? From a surety. So that was the writ of what? Of debt. Then we have a writ of detinue. Writ of detinue was to work on the wrongful what? Detention of a chattel. You get, and basically the writ of detinue was against the bailee. It worked under bailment. You get, and we have the writ of account. It was on accountability. Since the guild masters appointed guilds to contribute to the rent, at the end the guilds were accountable. You get, so that was the writ of what? Account. Then we have the writ of conspiracy. It was developed in the year 1589, the writ of conspiracy. The writ of conspiracy, that's where we see false imprisonment, whereby even the concept of battery was under there by that time. The concept of battery was under false imprisonment. Then we also have malicious prosecution, still under the writ of conspiracy. You get, and we have the writ of nuisance. The writ of nuisance was there to protect immovable property from interference. That was the writ of what? Of nuisance, to protect the immovable property from interference. Then we have the writ of defamation. The writ of defamation was developed just to protect the nobility, because for them they proved that the peasants had no reputation to defend, but the people that had money, or the rich people, or the nobility, the monarch, or the feudal lords are the ones that had a reputation to do what? To keep, but the peasants didn't have what? A reputation to keep. So those are some of the writs that were developed in the feudal stage. And basically, bear in mind that these writs were developed to protect the nobility on the expense of the what? Of the serfs or the peasants. That's why those writs were what? Were developed, and they favored only the nobility. You get? So after this feudal stage, or when we see this feudal stage, realize that many of the people or many of the serfs became uncontented. You get? Because in this feudal stage, or the feudal stage that we are talking about, realize that these serfs paid the landlords, you get, through produce or labor. So the produce that was paid to the landlord, these landlords sold it at a higher price, and the serfs sold the produce to the landlords at a cheaper price. So these people became dissatisfied, and due to the fact that the landlords had imposed high tax rates on the serfs and the peasants, these people looked for another solution where they can get money to pay what? To pay rent. That's why they also started trade. They engaged in trade, hence leading to the era of what? Mercantilism. You get, as we shall going to see. So mercantilism developed from the year 1450 to the year 1700 AD. You get? So mercantilism developed just because these people or the serfs were tired of the rule of the what? Of the feudal lords. And it also developed due to the fact that there was rise of towns, you get, and the merchant capital. The towns boosted trade, you get, making the feudal empire irrelevant, you get, and making it down compared to the what? Compared to the trade. So capitalism took over. And you have to know here, all the trade development was out of the what? Of the expansion of the guilds. Since most of the guilds were what? More guilds were brought. These guilds, for them, they're the ones that contributed rent. When they contributed rent, for them, they could get the produce and sell them at a higher price. So these people also said, the people that were practicing agriculture and farming, they said, no way, let's also sell our own produce to the market. Why do we sell them to the landlords at a cheaper price, yet for them they sell it outside there at a higher what? At a higher price. So basically we see that the capitalism took over as a result. This era of mercantilism took over. The trade towns, or the trade towns developed on the basis of what? Of fairs, you get. And the trade fairs were like temporary what? Markets. Those were the trade fairs or the fairs. They were like temporary market. And as fairs became permanent, you get, as these fairs became permanent, or as those markets became permanent, the merchants began to do what? To penetrate the feudal economy. Reason being that if these markets became permanent, so they penetrated into the feudal economy, whereby these people, or the guilds, or the landlords, that they could sell to the traders the what? The produce. Then these traders could also take them for manufacturing. Then they bring back and sell things of luxurious to the what? To the guilds or the landowners. Hence the economy, or the money that was given to them, penetrated into the what? The feudal economy, making it what? Irrelevant, and making it dull compared to the mercantilism what? Stage or mercantilism. And basically, just know even the serfs and the peasants, they engaged in the what? In the cottage what? Industry. This cottage industry were started by what? By the guilds. You get, and these cottage industries and the merchants supplied within the materials for production and bought the products for them. You get, so these cottage industries were there to manufacture some of the raw material that were brought in, and after manufacture, these traders could sell to the guilds or the landowners the luxury what? Things. You get, those merchants began selling luxurious to the feudal lords, and money penetrated the feudal economy. And here basically it portrays to you that the peasants started rioting because the things that the landlords or the feudal lords that wanted were expensive, forcing harsh imposing taxes or means of collecting taxes, making them what? Harsh. So as a result, the peasants made riots all over Europe. You get, so the merchant class became what? Richer, because for them trade had become what? Had become popular. You get, manufactories were developed as a result. The manufactories, they are not basically factories, but they are manufactories. They are more so small factories. And as a result, also under the mercantilism period, there was closure of movement. What do I mean? Closure movement in the countryside, since they wanted to put what? A sheep rand, whereby there was high prices on wool, and the demand of wool was high. These people enclosed closure in the countryside, whereby they enclosed what? Movement in regards to do what? To rear sheep for wool, because wool was at a higher what? At a higher price. And basically the closure of movement, it boosted the international trade. International trade basically led to the occurrence of gold and silver, where people could sell things in exchange for gold and what? And silver. Still under this mercantilism trade or the mercantilism period, we see that there was what? a triangular trade. What do I mean by a triangular trade? Basically, all the trading points internationally could make a triangle. You get? So basically bear in mind that's what briefly happened in the mercantilism period. It was a period composed of manufactories, enclosure movement, international trade. You get? So basically the law that was developed under mercantilism, there was dust courts and fair courts. These dust courts and fair courts handled the issues of commercial transaction. Commercially, the merchants had their own laws. They had trade laws that could act as that could normally be binding, more so during the trade routes. You get? There was malicious prosecution that was also developed when you read the case of Knight versus Knight. You get? And basically here what you have to know about malicious prosecution, the other time they could say that the person that could report for treason was not answerable. But here if you could report someone, you could be answerable once your reporting was acted under malice. Malicious out of malice or without probable cause, as we shall see malicious prosecution in general. Then you also have defamation was also developed. You get? The writ of trover was also developed under the mercantilism. What do I mean by writ of trover? In today's tort, it means as conversion. That is the writ of trover, where the defendant was willing to return a chattel, but had either willing or wrongfully damaged it. What do I mean? You are willing to return something, but you have damaged it, or failure to return a chattel on demand of the owner of it. That is the writ of trover. Then the writ of detenue was first limited to bailment, but however, but later it also covered the failure to return a chattel when demanded. That was the writ of detenue. Then we have the writ of debt. It was also extended to cover broad areas of debt. The writ of defamation was they brought in the concept of sedition, the publication. You get? Under publication, your publication was always investigated. You get? Then you have negligence was also looked or brought in as a cause of action under the torts that were developed. So basically that is under the stage of mercantilism. You get? So basically note that. So mercantilism, since people practiced trade under mercantilism and we had manufactories, so the demand became vital, or became more. People started producing surplus products. You get? And people had demand for various commodities. Then that ushered in the era of industrial capitalism, which moved from 1700 AD to 1870 AD. That